This is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news and intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversations. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the management and staff of Guardian Radio.
With early detection comes early prevention.
Put that in your pencil, make you feel like a champion.
Rise up again, let nothing keep you down. Live your best. Hear the urologist speak. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your manhood, don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed, it's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
You will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I telling you, with early detection
Comes early prevention.
but letting your pencil make you feel like a champion.
Rise up
Good
again.
evening, Bahamas. This is Bahamian Urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto, and I'm joined, as always, with Bahamian General Surgeon and Surgical Oncologist Dr. Wesley Francis. Good evening, Dr. Francis.
Good evening, Greg, and good evening, Bahamas.
So we're here, we're prompted by what we're seeing as professionals in terms of the overwhelming amount of trauma, violence that's plaguing our society, overwhelming our healthcare system, turning our PMH, Princess Margaret Hospital, inside out, overwhelming the staff, both emotionally, physically, putting such a financial drain on our limited healthcare budget. We can't sustain this. I mean, as a nation, we can't continue to have murders at the rate we're seeing. We can't continue to have the trauma that we're continuing to see, and that even includes motor vehicle accidents where persons are driving recklessly, not wearing seatbelts, driving intoxicated, having no regard for others' welfare or the safety of others on the road. We've become a very selfish and dangerous society to live in, and that's very unfortunate. And I don't know where the end is in sight, but PMH is essentially drowning. We can't make any new innovations happen because we don't have the finances, because essentially trauma, violence, attempted murder is putting such a burden on our beds, our operating time, our intensive care units, in terms of blood products, in terms of intensivists, in terms of nursing staff that we already have a shortage of. What's the answer, Dr. Francis?
Well, I mean, the answer is, we know the extent of the problem, at least as it affects healthcare. I mean, the answer is that we have to start with the generation that's not lost. And I think we have to start thinking about people or asking people to be more emotionally intelligent and dealing with better conflict resolution. Because I think conflict resolution or lack of the ability to resolve conflicts tend to lead to violence. And if you live in a society where you have to express yourself with violence, someone's on the receiving end of that. And that's someone win and the other person lose. But we all end up paying the price because those we have to take care of those patients. You can't not take care of them. You have to. I remember a couple of years ago when I was head of department. One of the things that we saw, especially in the orthopedic department, orthopedics only did trauma. There was no other time to do any other kind of orthopedics other than trauma. So people who were kids born with some sort of malformations, or people who had joint issues, or people who had, for example, arthritis and deformities that needed to be corrected, you just couldn't do it because they didn't have the time. Everything on their list was basically trauma.
I mean, we seem to wake up every other day with news in the paper and the radio and the media, social media as well. This individual was shot 7 times. This person succumbed to gunshot wounds. And then if you think of those who brought into the hospital, the amount of effort it takes and it's usually multidisciplinary, multiple surgical specialties working at once, because we have individuals shot in the neck, shot in the head, shot in the chest. We need thoracic surgeons. We need vascular surgeons. We need urologists. We need general surgeons. We need neurosurgeons. All of us are at our wits' end trying to save these individuals. And many of these individuals, known to the police, come in with ankle monitoring bracelets. We're in a shootout with the police. We're caught in an armed robbery, and the violence never ends. I don't know how these individuals keep getting back on the streets. We read in the papers all the time of individuals who are on bail for the 3rd time. They were on bail for armed robbery in 2019. They were on bail for a double murder in 2021. Now they're caught trying to rape a 70-year-old in their own home in 2022. That just becomes the norm. And it's a sad state of affairs where there is no recourse for their actions. I mean, they're destroying our nation. They're destroying our society. But there are no repercussions for them. And they know that. They know that the courts are a joke. They know that that even if they have to spend some time in jail, within 2 years, their court case is not going to come up and they're going to get on bail. They know that these ankle bracelets really mean absolutely nothing. The police are frustrated. They dedicate their lives. They put their lives at risk to put these individuals and put them before the courts, and then the courts let them down. And I cannot understand that.
I mean, everything has a root cause, you know. And I suppose all of what you said is the root cause is multifactorial. But I think it starts in the home. It starts in you know, how people are brought up, how people view other individuals, what we watch. Everything that we consume visually, what we consume when we hear, all of that goes into our, into our being. I think one of the things that you see all of these things on WhatsApp, on social media, and it desensitizes you. You see a lot of murders. You see, even on television, I mean, you see people shoot out and all of that. And all of that gets, assimilated in an individual over time. And so you're desensitized. And I think it's this being desensitized, then you don't value life and you don't value other people and respect them. And then, it leads to this way of violence. But it has to start from early, from in the home and being raised a certain way. And violence beget violence. And I mean, there's a business of violence there too, I mean, people profit from violence. And so it becomes a revolving door. And as long as people profit from violence, as long as there's some benefit to be gained from it or incentive, then people will continue to do it. In the meantime, in the health, and this is a healthcare show, on the healthcare end, we don't discriminate. We can't discriminate. There's nobody. A criminal come in, it doesn't matter. That's a human being that we have to offer healthcare to. And I would say one thing, the one upside of this whole thing is that I would say PMH knows how to respond to violence. Yes, we have limited resources, but when it comes to trauma, I mean, PMH handles trauma in a very efficient way. I would say to people, I say it all the time, if you find yourself 2-3 o'clock in the morning with a serious trauma issue, whether it's car accident, gunshot wound, whatever, the best place to be is in PMH, or that's the best place to go, because there's a trauma team, and that trauma team is very experienced. That's a well-oiled machine. If it's one thing the PMH does well, I think it's trauma. Very acute trauma. And I mean, you can say that. I mean, you've been a part of that team, and we respond. But it's at the expense of everything else. And all the resources get used up. So when you hear of lists getting canceled because there's no blood, that means the blood bank actually got wiped out the night before. And so people who need cancer surgery or gynecological surgery, any other elective general surgery, that gets postponed because it has to give way to the burden of trauma that we encounter.
And it's not only that, it's a non-traumatic emergencies. I mean, there are persons who have infected diabetic feet that come in and they're not seen for hours on end, not because there's a lack of empathy. It's just because the resources and the personnel are stretched so thin by these oncoming traumas that keep coming. You think you've cleared it. I was from 25 years ago. I was at PMH, and you would be there. You think you'd get a break, and then you hear, okay, there's another car accident, or there's another stabbing, or there's another drive-by shooting, and it takes endless effort to try to save that one individual. It may take 12 individuals for 6 hours straight trying to save that individual, and then obviously we could have been doing numerous other things. We could have been caring for someone who came in with a pneumonia. We could have been caring for, as I said, someone who came in with an infected diabetic foot, or someone who came in who might have cancer, who is coming in because of the morbidity associated with their cancer and it needs urgent treatment, and they're waiting endlessly. And then not only that, it reached the point where we run out of trolleys.
Yeah, it's a simple supply and demand, right? It's supply and demand. If the demand increases and your supply is sort of fixed, and obviously, then that's what happens. You get the people who are not, who are still ill, but they're not emergent at the time, or not viewed as emergent at the time. They have to then wait, and hence this is where or how there are longer wait times. And then that translates even into people who are on the ward who are waiting for other things. When all the resources are consumed with this, then obviously it's just a demand and supply equation. If trauma and all of these things increase and there's a fixed supply, then hey, that's what happens.
And we only have a finite number of hours to operate in a given week. And if we lose that opportunity because an entire list is wiped out by a life or death emergency, then it becomes a mushroom effect, because then you got to move those patients to another week, which means you got to move other people, then you got to move other people. And then it keeps happening because it's frequent that we get our list crashed by emergencies, by traumas.
Well, it'd be trauma and also C-sections, but we ain't talking about the C-sections, right? But certainly trauma disrupts everything. It's disruptive. So it's disruptive in the home. It's disruptive in the local community. It's then disruptive to the country. And then it wipes out or uses up all the resources that you have to allocate to other things.
And it says a lot about our society when you can just casually walk amongst the wards, particularly the male wards, male surgical wards in particular, at Princess Margaret Hospital, and you can see that all the prison officers, all the police who are armed to the T, basically guarding very dangerous individuals who came in because of trauma. There's always that fear that whoever tried to kill them is going to come back and try to kill them in the hospital setting. And you have innocent persons in the bed next to them, and in the same ward as well. And you got to live because of the chaos of the society. You have to live when you're sickest, when you're most vulnerable. You have to worry about being next to the worst of society, and it's not getting any better. It's actually just continuing to get worse. We're losing dozens, if not hundreds of nurses over the years to greener pastures where not just because of economics, because of less stress, better working conditions, that they go off to the United States, they go off to Canada, they go off to the United Kingdom, they go off to New Zealand or Australia, and we can't blame them because they want to give their family a better life. They want to have a better life for themselves. We're not going to get anywhere. Nurses are the cornerstone of our healthcare system. They're the engine that runs everything. So if we don't have qualified nurses, if we don't have super specialized intensive care unit nurses, we're not going to be able to have a top-notch tertiary hospital. We're not going to provide the top-notch healthcare that this country deserves. And a lot of it is because of violence. When we look at why persons are not coming back, persons who have specialties, but persons who can make wonderful contributions to our society, even amongst my own family. My own brother, a gastroenterologist with a fellowship, he's not going to come back. Violence in this crime-ridden society is part of that equation in his thought process. But I have cousins, the same thing, who are super specialized, could provide care that would be wonderful for our healthcare system, refusing to come back. So we're having this brain drain as well. Crime is having a horrible effect on the future of our society because so many persons are refusing to live as if we're prisoners in our own home, where we have all the bars, we all have the chains, we have to live our life. They're men who, as fathers, as husbands, they never get a good night's sleep because every little noise, they have to wake up and patrol their surroundings, make sure that their house is safe, make sure their families are safe. Even more profound is if they were a victim of home invasion or a robbery. So we're all living with some amount of post-traumatic stress disorder, a society as a whole. We have a caller coming in. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Hey, good evening, Doc. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
Listen, I applaud you for what you're saying. I think, though, there's a couple of things we also have to look at. We're running a entire country in which 75% of the population lives on 21 miles, right?
Correct.
That type of population density without proper urban development and proper social programs puts us at a risk for the violence and crime and the different things we talk about. But even more so, we have a hospital which really, according to industry standards, and I've worked there, so I can tell you this, we haven't had a free bed as defined by normalized international hospital standards in years. I mean, you don't have the ability to keep a room and sanitize it and turn it over and do things for 48 hours. You just don't. I mean, we're working in the hospital. You know that the minute someone's out, somebody got to get in. That's just the nature of it. And we're running 800 beds in a 600-bed hospital.
Very much so. Yes.
With patients in hallways and different things and everything else. And it's critical. You know, I had a call the other day from a friend of mine whose family had been airlifted, and they just called me because they knew I've worked in the system. Hey, can you help us? And there's nothing you can do. For 2 days, the person is sitting in triage, and there's nothing. Listen, the doctors are doing what they can. The nurses are stretched thin. You know, pharmacy is stretched thin. All of these things are stretched thin. But if you can't get a patient in a proper room, there's only so much you're going to do for that person. And I can tell you this, having been a patient myself within the public system in the last 6 months, right? And so we have to find ways to properly invest in real healthcare in this country. And until we do that, I mean, we built a fancy hospital where we put in almost 50% of the building that we put in as offices. When we need beds, you know? And so these are the things we have to look at. The salary disparity is ridiculous if you're not in private practice. We can't afford pharmacists. We can't afford to keep nurses on for what we're paying them, and particularly for the stress that we have to deal with. All right? And so these are things you have to look at from a system-wide approach. And if the politicians aren't going to fix the problem, then they need to get out of the way and let people who are in healthcare fix it. But what's happening isn't working. It can't be working. And the truth of the matter is that the answers that have been proposed by private facilities only really answer some of the specialty needs. They're not answering the general practice needs. They're not answering the A&E needs, those sort of things. All right? It's great to have all these specialty clinics that can deal with when people have to move from the hospital to something else. But if you can't even get an appointment, and I can tell you this because as someone who had to go through the NIB system, they told me I couldn't get an appointment to even see the doctor with a neck injury. They told me I couldn't get an appointment for 4 months with a neck injury.
I mean, 4 months is a short time. I mean, when I remember we would give urology clinic appointments a year and a half. There's 6 beautiful operating theaters, but we don't have the staff to run them. As in urology, we have a operating list once every 2 weeks. So the public are so frustrated that why can't we get our elective cases done? Why we can't even get our cancer cases done? If we only have a list because we don't have enough sufficient operating staff, we don't have sufficient operating nurses, we don't have sufficient anesthetists to have a list. We should really have a list twice a week, every other week. And then when we do have a list, a lot of times we basically lose it because of an emergency case of life or death. We really can't do anything. We're really not doing anything. I mean, we're not accomplishing anything, and it just gets worse. It just gets worse.
And here's the scary thing about it. I've been in the system now. This is my 25th year.
Yes,
We've been talking about this when I came in the system.
I know you very well.
Yes.
Our problems. And see, here's the thing. What you can have from time to time is people who come in the system and give you some innovative solutions on the ground for acute problems. All right? But to really deal with these chronic issues of staffing, of supplies, of different things like that, you need a long-term solution. And I can tell you this is somebody who's ran a department. Listen, I stretched everything every way I could. And yes, did we improve the service? I think we did. I think the patients said that we did. I think people who work in the system thought that we did. But we never really got to cure the main problem, because the main problem is you're running a 800 patient hospital in a hospital designed for 550 to 600 people. All right?
Yeah, I agree. I very much agree. Yeah.
So caller,
we got to figure out what it is we want to do.
Don't leave yet, because I know you very well, and I mean,
you should know me very well. Yeah, your father taught me.
You mean Gregory's father taught you?
Yeah, Greg. Yeah.
But it's a demand. I mean, the demand on the service is immense. I mean, you said 800 to 500. Yeah, I mean, the bed situation is less than that. But again, I still believe that PMH functions when it needs to function, right? And it should function all the time. But I think we were talking about trauma and the effects of trauma on the healthcare system. And you, I mean, I know you've been around a long time. You would have seen it. I know in your department, you would see how certain things that you had that got depleted and that was supposed to be used for other situations, but it got totally depleted because of this situation.
We're in a constant state of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And that is just not feasible for the only real option for 80% of your population as it relates to health, to healthcare and hospital care. You just can't do that.
So,
all right?
Right, and I agree with you, right? And here's the thing, right? I mean, we do have a hospital system from a dollar point of view that is resourced more than the majority, I think, of the rest of the Caribbean.
Oh, easily.
Right.
Easily.
I've gone around
I tell
the
people
Caribbean.
I go to places and hospitals still wouldn't, and on stilts.
Right. And so, but we take that for granted, right? And I think we can better utilize those things, those resources. But again, when you place the demand for 400,000 population size and for the amount of money that is spent, there's a mismatch there somewhere, okay? We should be getting, we should be getting more outcomes out of that. So, I mean, people.
So I'll tell you a funny story, right? In years past, when I sat in other places, I would send budgets in, and I would say to them, "I've done the math. This amount of money is what we need to properly resource this particular unit for the country, right?" And they would come back later and give me 60%. And I would say to them, "What am I supposed to do with 60%? Well, if you run out, come back and ask for more." But I said, the problem is, if you don't plan to have certain things in place from the jump, right? When you decide to only have 60% of that, the other 40% costs you 160%, right? We waste money because we decide that we're not going to properly resource healthcare, right? But they find the money for everything else that they want, all right? You know, it blew my mind. It blows my mind when I saw the other day a document in which the Queen's Honors Program gets to operate on. I ain't call a number here. If I call a number here and call the figures,
we don't need to go down that road.
Okay, but here's the thing. If that's what we're spending on that, and then the hospital and the clinics don't have supplies and meds and other things like that, somebody needs to get taken out in the backyard and either, if not beaten, shot.
See, well, that's more violence, and I have to take care of that. You understand? But that's a problem. So you just created another patient for me to take care of.
Right.
So we can't resort to violence, and that's what we're trying to say on this show.
But they are constituting a violence upon the Bahamian people by intentionally undersourcing critical resources that people need. You know,
I think it's not just the resources; it's how we use the resources. Of course, I think we have more than enough resources per capita. We spend more money on healthcare
than the majority of
any other
in the region. Yeah, right. I mean, we don't spend as much as the U.S. We can't spend as much as the U.S. We don't have the budget that the U.S. have. But let's do say that per capita spending in the Bahamas is far better than any I've seen in the rest of the Caribbean, probably outside of Cayman Islands, right?
I wouldn't even say the Cayman, because Cayman's done better on us in terms of proper utilization of generic products from across the world.
They're a smaller country.
We're still stuck in this brand-centric universe.
So the whole brand-centric universe has to do with other things, right? And I'm sure you know that. I'm not going to go into all of that, right? But certainly it's purchasing is something that can reduce the cost overall. But one of the things when you actually work or your healthcare system is on the border of the richest country in the world, the citizens actually demand those brand products, okay? And that's a different thing. And you know that for sure. I'm sure that's something that you are fully aware of.
I will say this, okay? That if we don't educate our population properly, yes, they're going to be wooed by the 17,000 commercials that they see for both medicines and diagnostic products and treatment options and all these different things, okay? Everybody in the Bahamas wants to know, why can't I get my diabetes score to my smartphone through the government? All right, I understand.
Agreed. Yeah, right.
But here's the issue too. Okay, we do a poor job in educating ourselves on this in the system, and so we have poor information to give to our patients. I have seen this at every step of the way. I will speak for pharmaceuticals.
You know what? I think we need to bring you here next week. so that we can have a longer discussion on this, because we can have an entire show on this.
Listen, we could. Let me say this, and then I'll open the lines for somebody else. I don't want to monopolize the program, all right? But here's the issue: at every point to where we have moved, and I can say this both in public and private, where we have moved from a traditional brand to a properly educated, approved first world generic, our patients and the system as a whole has ended up embracing it and realizing that a dollar saved is a dollar earned.
Absolutely.
All right. So our problem is we got to get people out of that system and understanding that, hey, there are other options. The last thing I would say is this: healthcare and education have always been two things that I have said. All right, that if the government does not do well, it should not do at all. All right, they're too critical to the development of a 50-year-old country to screw up. And so if you can't do it well, right, we don't have time for you to stumble and bumble and fumble.
Particularly education. I mean, education,
okay?
If you do
all
education
right?
well,
and
healthcare
and I can't learn if I'm sick. So if you can't do it well, get out of it. Okay? And there are ways that we can do this. It's been shown across the board in other places, some places bigger than us, some places in scale with us, that we can find a way to make this happen. It's not happening because for every year that I have been working in this country, which is 25, and every year I've been alive in this country, which is now going to be 51 in a couple of weeks, the premise has always been that the public sector's dysfunction becomes, the public sector's dysfunction becomes the impetus for the private sector's profitability.
That is very true. That is very true. But I think we need you to come on the show so that we could explore that a little more. I think you've raised something, made or raised awareness for something, and I think we need to take that further. But tonight is probably not the scope for that whole thing. But we can bring you on the show.
Get me, so.
Yeah, I know how to get you. I'll find you.
Good show.
We'll bring you.
Good
Right.
show.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we're having a very interesting debate. We'll be back on the other end of the break. This is Urologist Speaks.
You try to rest, roll with the best. For all your printing needs, there ain't no one better, no. For posters and banners, magazines and flyers. For window decals, greeting cards and newsletters. No job too big and there's no job too small. You name it, we can print it, just give us a call. Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
Mommy, guess what I did in school today?
Hold on, sweetie. Mommy's sending a text.
But Mommy, my teacher said that you're not supposed to text and drive.
I know what I'm doing.
Oh, look, Mommy, the Smith twins. Mommy, watch out!
In 2017, approximately 54 people died as a result of traffic accidents. A percentage of these fatalities occurred as a result of texting while driving. Just taking your eyes off the road for 5 seconds can increase your chance of crashing. Remember, even the smallest voice counts.
Texting.
Brought to you by UB Radio and Guardian Radio 96.9.
Always on the go? Missed the show? You can now listen to Guardian Radio talk shows anytime, anywhere on Spotify and YouTube by searching Guardian Radio 96.9 FM or by entering the name of your favorite show. You can also listen by logging on to GuardianTalkRadio.com and clicking on the podcast tab. Guardian Radio, continuing to provide you with fresh news and smart talk anywhere, anytime, all day.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome back. This is Urologist Speaks with Bahamian Urologist Dr. Greggory Pinto and Bahamian Surgical Oncologist Dr. Wesley Francis. We're talking about the state of our healthcare system, the toll that violence and trauma has not only on the healthcare system but on our society as a whole, affecting the emotional, the psychological well-being of our nation and young and old. We were talking a little bit about how trauma is affecting Princess Margaret Hospital and how it's draining our resources. I'll just say from personal standpoint, I think we are providing a lot of resources for such a small country to healthcare, but I think we need to be a lot smarter in the way we allocate those resources. For example, in urology, I would see almost every week we would have a middle-aged or elderly man flown in on an air ambulance from Cat Island, from Andros, from one of the family islands for $5,000, for $6,000 for the air ambulance service because the general practitioner, the family practitioner couldn't place a urethral catheter in that individual, and because of an enlarged prostate, which is an inevitable part of every man getting older, they couldn't get the catheter in, which is not a knock against their expertise as a physician. Even as urologists, sometimes when you have a very, very big prostate, the catheter placement can be extremely challenging unless you have the proper catheter. And I told administration many times, you need to have a firm, clear silicone catheter that allows you to get past the obstructing extrinsic compression of that big prostate. And if you have those catheters available, in fact, there's a special catheter just for enlarged prostates called a coude catheter, which is a silicone catheter with a curved tip that allows you to get past that big obstructing prostate. And if you have that available, anybody, even a nurse on the family island, can put that catheter in. So many times they would have these individuals coming in extremis, feeling like the bladder is going to burst. For unknown reason, on the air ambulance, they were giving them more IV fluids, although the person's bladder was about to burst. I never understood that thought process. So I would have to come in with a coude catheter of my own stock. Never got compensated for all the thousands of supplies I provided to Princess Margaret Hospital. I would have to come out 3 o'clock in the morning out of my bed, 2 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, put that catheter in 2 minutes. The patient is fine, great relief, doesn't even have to be admitted to hospital, has to find his way back to Andros, has to find his way back to Cat Island. If we had that $35 catheter in Andros or Cat Island or Rum Key, we wouldn't have to waste $5,000, $6,000. And this would happen every single week. And then we want to know where our money went. But that's just me digressing. We have another call coming in. Good evening. This is Urologist Speaks.
Good evening, doctors. I trust you guys are doing well this evening.
Very well, thank you.
I must say that I totally enjoyed the contribution of the previous caller and the dialogue and the conversation between all of you and the previous caller, which prompted me to want to add my 2 cents to this mix.
Well, we appreciate your call.
Okay. Doc, let me preface everything that I'm about to say with this one simple fact. You know, we're talking about the healthcare system in this country. We spent an astronomical amount of money on the upgrades and the upgrades at the Princess Margaret Hospital in particular, especially the accident and emergency section and that new section that happened to be built under the former F&M administration. You know, I tried to figure out if we went that route to spend all that money on the upgrades, whatever in the world happened to the equipment that was supposed to be provided in this facility to bring this facility up to the, I want to say, the new frontier of this country in terms of health care. Whatever happened to the monies that should have been allocated for that equipment? And two, why isn't that equipment allocated in the hospital already? I was made to understand that even in terms of the beds, there were not sufficient beds already in that area for to provide the level of patient care that many Bahamians would have expected for the amounts of monies that was spent on the infrastructure itself. And then to add to that, I mean, if we went to this level, then where is the expertise? Why isn't the country training persons to take on these positions that they had proposed that this new facility should have been taken? And where's the training for the new doctors that will then replace those who are already either on the way out, those who have already got the training? But in other words, what I'm saying is, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, because obviously as physicians age and get older, a new generation of doctors should have been already on the cusp training to take over these positions that the former physicians and doctors would have left behind. I mean, we as a country, it seems as if we always have to go back to rebuilding the wheel, to restarting the wheel, instead of continuing on the journey of passing the baton on to the next doctor when this doctor would have already served their purpose, and the next young doctor is coming in, can pick up and take on the baton from that doctor would have left off. I mean, why are we still lagging behind these things? My last point here is accountability and transparency. These two words are being used in this country like a frisbee. We just take it and just throw them any and everywhere. But, the onus is put upon governments. I don't care whether it's the PLP government or the F&M government. When it comes to health care, they are not serious enough about bringing the level of health care that this country truly deserves. We are a sick people in this country. And why are we sick? What happened to the agencies that talk about the importation of the different types of foods in this country? What kind of hormones are in this in the food? What sort of pesticides are being used on these foods? We have no proper structure in this country to safeguard the health of the people. And the health of the people is the wealth of the people. We have to fix. If we can fix the food, I believe that we can fix a lot of the illness in this country. And like I said in closing, I find no legislator, no official in Ministry of Health from a MP standpoint or whatever is truly and seriously addressing these matters, ensuring that all of the avenues that I have addressed so far is each part plays a significant role in bringing about the reversal of the health crisis that we have in this country. And I'm going to just end my commentary here to clear the lines and allow other persons to call in, because I'm pretty sure a lot of persons can attest that it's the food and the vegetables that we specifically import in this country are part of the problem that we have with a lot of the diseases, the cancers and stuff that we see our Bahamian people are undergoing at this time. But thanks for taking my call. I'll continue to listen. God bless.
A lot of wonderful points. I'll start with the last point. We were talking for the last few shows, we were talking about modifiable risk factors for cancer, and diet, lifestyle play a tremendous role. We were talking about alcohol and the affirmation by the U.S. Surgeon General that there's a strong link between at least 8 different cancers and the risks, associated risks with even low alcohol intake. We consume a large amount of alcohol per capita in our society. We are very unhealthy eating habits. We are very sedentary lifestyle in general. We're a very obese nation. So all of that obviously contributes to our high numbers of cancers, our high numbers of non-communicable diseases, whether it's hypertension, diabetes, etc., high cholesterol, coronary artery disease, which is the number one killer. When we talk about are we producing enough physicians, we have more than enough physicians. Dr. Francis and I have so many friends who are leading the hospitals around the world. They're Bahamians. They're not coming back. We ask them why they're not coming back. Crime is always going to be a part of it. The unwelcome environment, when you're brought back here, you're taken through the ringer. I mean, for many years, I don't think I was able to sleep on my back because all the knives I had in my back. So it's not a very nice environment, not at all. And even from the public health system, when you come back qualified, you have to wait 5 years, 6 years, 7 years to be promoted. I mean, it's ridiculous. Then you'll have a foreigner with the same qualification come in from day one and they become a consultant. So it's a lot of disparity and it's a lot of frustration.
So Greg, I want to say something because the caller brought up a lot of he made a lot of statements, some of which are true, and some of them I think we need to clarify. What I would say is that and the investments that he spoke of with the critical care block, that's what it's called, and the new accident emergency, I think we should applaud government, whichever government it was. I think it was the F&N man, whomever. They did put aside sufficient capital funds, and it's called capital investments. They invested in the building. The equipment, that building was fully equipped. I would say to you that building had the technology at the time that was state-of-the-art and rivaled any hospital in South Florida. We used those equipment. We used that services, and the Bahamian public benefited from the services. I specifically remember we had a minimally invasive surgery symposium, and Greg, you might remember this, that I particularly put on where we broadcast surgery, minimally invasive surgery that we were doing in the Bahamas throughout the region. That was the level of technology we had in that OR. Where things fell down is that while sufficient capital funds were put in for the infrastructure, no funds were put in for maintenance. And so you saw over time, and I've witnessed over time, the steadily slow degrading of equipment, such that we came from a standard where I would say that was better than anywhere that I trained, and I trained in the U.S. and in Canada, but we had better equipment here in the Bahamas. So let's not take that for granted. We had it, we have it, and the level of care we offered was on par, sometimes even better than what you can get in the U.S., okay? But over time it eroded, right? Because we don't maintain things. We don't put in the budget for maintenance. So I do give credit for the capital investment that they put, but the maintenance and keeping up the standards is where we fell. The other point about educating the future of surgeons, we have a surgical residency program. We've graduated in the last 10 years, and I think we had a program when you were away. We talked about our surgical residency program. We've graduated 8 fully qualified surgeons, all of whom work in PMH right now and in the RAND.
And many of them went off and did subspecialties.
And they went off and did subspecialties and came back home. So we can't not look at these things. Yeah, we're all frustrated that some things don't work out, but we have to also give credit where credit is due. And the level of care that you can get when it works is on par to what you can get in any first world country. But yes, our resources are overwhelmed sometimes by, again, we talk about all the violence and all the trauma. In fact, I would say to you, and this is kind of a paradox, there are people in North America who colleagues of mine, who want to send their students down to the Bahamas so that they can get the experience and trauma that we can expose them to, right? That's good and that's bad. It's bad because we use it up all our resources, but the trauma experience that PMH has is it can only be rivaled in probably places like Cape Town or New York or real urban centers in the U.S.
Los Angeles. Yes.
Or Los Angeles. So let's not take those things for granted. Yeah, we have a system that's broken, but there are a lot of good things in there and that we can work and build on them. I'm not going to burn the house down. I refuse to think that we need to burn it because it's a safety net hospital. And yes, listen, the care that PMH provides to a lot of people, nobody hears about it. You only hear about the bad things. You hear about the war, the people in the wars, the people who are waiting long, but you don't hear about the miraculous surgeries that actually go on there.
Well,
Okay?
I'll even make the point that
It's good.
I'll say for a certainty, the murder rate would be much higher if we didn't have a first-tier trauma system going on at Princess Margaret Hospital that we were salvaging and saving lives that in many places in the world, they wouldn't live.
What we used to be having a running poll of how we can keep that murder rate down. That's the trauma team used to be thinking. Okay, we got to save this one no matter what, so that we could bring that number down. But yeah, it still speaks to the amount of violence in the community that took over and consumes our resources. And the last thing I want to say, all of a lot of the reasons why we are unhealthy is because of our own choices, right? Talk about vegetables and all that. Yeah, whatever is imported, but we have to eat it, okay? We can grow things in our backyard. We can have, and a lot of people have started doing that. And so we just need to start to continue on that. And the last thing I'd say, education is essential. If we don't get education right, and that's what one of the callers said, an educated nation is a healthier nation. And education is one of what they call one of the pillars of adequate and proper healthcare.
And I'll also say that even in terms of nursing, we have one of the best nursing educational systems in the world, and that's why other countries are poaching our nurses, because they're so overly qualified and they're so excellent. So it's not that we're not producing them, is that because of better opportunities, because of better lifestyle, economics, etc., they're going on to greener pastures.
Well, we export nurses, obviously, and that's just the way. I mean, the first world countries have more resources than us. They can pay more. And so they take them. They have a greater demand, too, than we do.
I mean, a lot of them want to stay home. I think a lot of them
them
want to stay home, but because of the
they
work
wanna live,
environment,
of course,
yeah, it's
right?
not a very pleasant work environment. I don't think anyone who works at Princess Margaret thinks that it's a happy environment or somewhere that they do it because they love the people, they love the Bahamas. So they make that sacrifice and they try to trudge on and do whatever they can under difficult circumstances.
So one of the things that we need to focus on is what is called the social determinants of health. And education is the primary thing there. And we have to educate people, and that's one of the themes of the show. We have to educate. We have to educate people about lifestyle, about conflict resolutions, about modifiable risk factors for disease, about healthy, dieting, exercise, and all of that.
I'll just make this point. We'll talk about 3 common cancers that overwhelm our country. No one needs to be dying of prostate cancer. That's one of the easiest cancers to pick up, one of the easiest cancers to treat. But when you talk about the populace in general, males don't even want to go for a simple annual physical or get a PSA, prostate-specific antigen blood test, so that we can pick up prostate cancer early and give them a 100% cure. We talk about cervical cancer. How many dozens of women are being diagnosed with advanced metastatic cervical cancer when we have a HPV vaccine that essentially can eradicate 95% of all cervical cancers? We can give the HPV vaccine to this entire generation of young boys and young girls and young male and female adults, and we can eradicate cervical cancer for the next generation. And it's available free You're always knocking the government. It's available free in every local clinic, but parents don't take advantage of that. All the education in the world, yet people continue to die needless, scentless, painful deaths of cervical cancer, colorectal cancer. No one needs to be dying of colorectal cancer. Readily available, we can get a colonoscopy. We can preventively remove premalignant polyps, etc. The resources are there. The education is there, but the people, the populace, do not embrace it and take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's accountability starts with me.
If
you know,
I mean, can you imagine if somebody,
thing,
if there was a
right?
vaccine, a safe vaccine to eradicate breast cancer? Do you think there would be any debate that every woman was going to have it? We have the same thing for cervical cancer, but no one's taking advantage of it. What is the percentage of persons who are getting the HPV vaccine in terms of teenage boys or teenage girls? It's exceedingly low, and we keep talking about it and talking about it. I don't know if you know the hell a woman is going to go through if they get advanced cervical cancer and the slow death. And it's usually, even if you're an old woman, you can still live, you have years that you should enjoy. But we're talking about women in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, dying needlessly over 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, in and out of hospital, draining our resources, devastating the families, leaving orphans, leaving widowers. But nothing happens. So we can have all the resources, we can have all the educations, we can have all the opportunities that you can get anywhere in the world, but unless the population is going to take advantage of that, what can we do?
Agreed.
And trauma is something that we have to look at the root of it. As I said, there are too many angry young men and boys in this country, and violence breeds violence, as you said. Disrespect breeds disrespect. We are a country where we're all dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder because of the level of murder, because of the level of rape, the level of armed robbery, violence, carjackings. We're going to reach the level where we're going to be like Trinidad and Jamaica. We're going to have kidnappings. We got to stop. I don't know. It's one government or the other. It doesn't get any better. So we need to find a solution as a people. We can't keep blaming the government. We need to look at how we're raising our own children. It's the parents who are raising these murderers. It's the parents who are raising these rapists. It's not the government. So you can't always blame the church. You can't always blame the government. If you want to have 4 children with 4 different men and never give them any parental supervision or never give them any guidance or never instill any morality in them, and then you let these 4 young men out on society and want to know why they go into criminality, and then say, why isn't the government doing something? Why didn't you do something with your life? Why didn't you want better for yourself? Why didn't you want better for your children? And then the cycle continues, because these same children are going to go and have children that they're also going to be wayward parents and allow criminality and everything else. Just because your uncle was a drug dealer, just because your brother was a drug dealer, doesn't mean you want that life. And you can see that it's not a life that's going to lead to anything, because the average drug dealer does not live very long.
That is true. But yeah, it's about...
It's all about choices.
Choices.
It's all about choices.
And I think we use that word, choices. People have to understand.
And then
choices
it's the choices that we make for our young ones. I mean, if you're a 5-year-old is not going to make those choices. The parents, the grandparents, the uncles, the aunts have to make those choices for them. They need to enroll them in positive sporting events. They need to enroll them in Kiwanis. They need to enroll them in Cubs or Scouts and find an outlet for them. Not to run aimlessly on the streets looking for trouble. They need to have some discipline. They need to have some purpose. They need to have some hope. They need to live. They need to have. They need to live for something. They need to say that, you know what, this is my goal in life. How am I going to get there? They need to have a role model such as you, as we always have said many times. You're a perfect example. You could have gone another path. You grew up in the Grove, First Street, the Grove. You could have, like many of your friends, you could have gone a different path, but you've created a tremendous contribution to our society. You were instrumental in the surgical program. You've saved hundreds of lives throughout the years. It could have been the opposite. You could have taken lives. You could have been sitting in Fox Hill. So you might not have had all the role models, but you have to also motivate yourself to want to do better.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you're saying is true. And, but people need to realize that there's a lot available out there. I mean, things are hard, but there's a lot.
University of the Bahamas is free.
University of the Bahamas is
There's
free,
no
right?
excuse.
Public education is public education. Public education, yeah, I mean, good people come with a public education, right?
You have the NHI
came.
program. You have
Right.
no excuse not to get your medication, your
NHI
diabetic
is
meds.
there.
You can get your annual physicals.
The drug program is there.
The drug program is there. So I don't understand. It's not no matter what your limited resources, you can provide excellent health care, excellent education. So you can't be knocking the government, even with limited resources.
You know, and
they're providing that.
I know we the show soon end, but PMH is a safety net hospital. I want everybody out there listening. If PMH were to disappear today, where would this country be? We don't give the credit to that place. Okay, that place saves lives. Okay, yeah, we got some operational issues, but it's a safety net. And as one of the callers said, 80% of this population goes there.
And the nurses are the true heroines and heroes of PMH. I mean, what they endure, what they go through, it's not easy. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And my hats are off to them. I mean, when I think about the unsustainability of Bahamian male trauma, I mean, the Bahamian male rage, the Bahamian male resentment, it's a real thing. I just have to say that your environment...
We're losing a lot of males.
You're losing a lot. I mean, your environment does not define you. You may have been born into poverty. You may live the daily struggle, but poverty does not define your destiny. Let that hardship build character, let it build self-determination, impeccable work ethic to rise above your difficult circumstances. You can do it. I mean, there have been so many people who've been able to do it. So wake up every single day thinking about how can I change my life for the better? How can I improve the life of my family? How can I improve my Bahamas? You need to make the decision that you will not be ordinary, that you will strive for greatness. You have an everlasting potential, and I'm talking to the men and the young boys out there. So as long as you have a heartbeat, as long as you have air in your lungs, you have an opportunity to change the world, you have an opportunity to change your life, and we have an opportunity to change the Bahamas for the better. Thank you very much, Dr. Wesley Francis, and thank you to our audience for listening in.
Good night, Bahamas.
Good night.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Think you're losing grip of your man, then don't give up on hope.
Don't be ashamed. It's time to take control. Get some help from the urologist.
You will find
He'll help you solve your problems
on 96.9, yeah.
I'm telling you, with early detection
Comes early prevention.
but letting your